Welcome to Win the Day with Wasson,
presented by Market Scale in partnership with WTD Consulting. Let's deep dive into the principles and perspectives that have shaped the winning mindsets with our guests focused on driving people performance. Confident our guests can help you unlock the coveted it factor that we believe is a learnable trait enabling the separation for success in a world of human commoditization.
I'd like to welcome our Win the Day audience. We are in for a tremendous treat. Our next guest, really probably my college education because of how good he made me look in high school. Probably one of the biggest catch radiuses out there. A 9-year N.F.L. veteran, the pride of Southlake, Texas, a former Iowa Hawkeye, a teammate, a friend. Scott Chandler, welcome to Win the Day with Wasson.
Thanks for having me, Chase. Appreciate it.
Man, I'm fired up, Scott. Obviously, I know your story. I think for our audience, it takes a quick Google to realize the amount of success and accolades that have come with your career in athletics. Now, obviously, you're doing a ton of stuff off the field. But Scott, let's deep dive a little bit. Let's take it back to your years at Southlake. Really, as you started to form that foundation, that competitive mindset, that mentality that obviously puts you in the position where you are right now. But for our audience, Scott, give us some perspective about what it was like growing up in an athletic household and just kind of your journey prior to really embracing your football career.
Yeah, I grew up the third of 4 kids. I have an older brother who's 5 years older than me. And, he's probably the biggest influence on my life. I have, an older sister who's 2 years older and a younger sister who's 7 years younger. So growing up, my brother just beat me at everything. He'd take me out in the backyard and just beat me in baseball, beat me in basketball. We played one-on-one football. He'd just truck me over and over again. And eventually I'd get to the point where I wanted to quit, but he wouldn't let me quit. And, we'd keep playing. And it was probably about 7th grade before I ever beat him in anything. And I just got lucky and hit a couple shots at basketball. About that point, he started to have friends come over and they would play against me 2-on-1. And I don't know how that would ever seem fair, but I got beat up a lot as a kid and just became pretty resilient. Always had a delusional sense of confidence, I would say. Thought that I was going to be the best or was the best, and really had that all the way through high school. Now, high school didn't get off to a great start. I wanted to be a quarterback like my brother. Could throw the ball a mile, couldn't hit the broadside of the barn kind of thing. But those days at the front yard with him throwing to me had kind of paid off because I could catch it. And, learned how to kind of what a quarterback would want to see out there at the receiver position and just tried to emulate that a lot in high school. Then we got pretty lucky, had some amazing coaches who really helped. But I think about our junior year, we're 6-4 in the regular season, and I wasn't a starter and you weren't a starter. And, then all of a sudden we had our opportunity to present ourselves there in the playoffs, and we both kind of took it by the reins and took advantage of that situation. And, that was a huge confidence boost, just that first playoff game of our junior year at home, Wichita Falls, and I think I ended up having 100 yards and a couple touchdowns, and you're running the ball all over the place. And I remember us looking at each other after that game, being like, "Hey, this is what we've been waiting for. We're ready. Let's go." And we kind of ran with it the rest of the playoffs there, and that really boosted my confidence to go into camps that off season. And I went to all these camps and I did the same thing at all. I went to the A&M's camp, a lot of 1-days, SMUs, Oklahomas, and I was pretty dominant at all of them. But I didn't look like a football player. I was 6'7", 190 pounds when I was a junior in high school, and I had a lot of success in basketball, but really just hadn't had it in football much. And I remember that year between my junior and senior year, I went to a couple of basketball tournaments out in Las Vegas and Los Angeles, and I was a good basketball player. And I got dunked on like 7 times, and in one game by like 4 different dudes. And I remember thinking, man, I don't know if I've got the athleticism or the hops to handle this. But then I went to all these football camps, and I mean, there were GDs that they'd offered left and right, and they just didn't know what to do. It's 6'7" guy, run a little bit, had a good catch radius, like you said. And I mean, I went off at all these places, and finally got to one at Iowa where my brother was. He is a quarterback. And so they had a little something to look at because he was 6'7", 260. And, had a six-pack and 5% body fat, dripping wet. And I was never going to be that. But I was 6'7", 200 pounds, dominating my camp. And Coach Ferentz is still there, called me over after an hour and a half. So they were going to go up to my office. We got into his office, and he goes, "Hey, I'll be honest with you. I didn't know you were very good. We were sending you letters because your brother was here. And, but after what I saw today, we're offering you right now." And I remember just being like, "Man, that is a breath of fresh air." Because I've been going to all these camps. I went to SMU's camp, place that I was pretty interested in, right there at Dallas, and tore it up and went up to, their coach's office. And he's like, "Well, we're going to be watching this there." When I remember they did it. So I feel like they should offer. And so I offered. Now, a week later, I was ready. Like, I've always been one of these people who, I really trust the Lord to in my life. And I just kind of go out there and work hard and let the chips fall where they may.
Let's delve into that, Scott, because obviously one of the things that we talk through on this podcast is opportunity creates really, a platform for an individual to either scale, take a left, take a right, or move forward. In this instance, kind of hearing your journey, obviously you chose to step forward. But for our audience, Scott, that really doesn't have that perspective of how big Friday Night Lights is in Southlake. And you touched on, as a junior, really, you stayed the course, your opportunity was presented. In the biggest stages is where really you shine the brightest. And let's talk through that process. Here you are, a 6'7", 190-pound, junior at Southlake Carroll, really before the Dragons were on the map, per se, like they are right now. But as a junior, you excel on the field. You go to camps. Quite frankly, you are overlooked. I think a lot of those teams that passed on you have tremendous regret now. But I think those experiences, and probably your brother challenging you growing up, really gave you that mindset to continue to push and continue to take that chip on your shoulder to dominate. So let's take it back to 2002, our senior year, picked fourth in the district. Take our audience, Scott, back through your mindset then was really only an offer from Iowa, if I recall at the time, of how you really transcended not only the landscape of high school football with what you accomplished at Southlake as a wide receiver, but how that process put you in a position to ultimately scale at Iowa the following, 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think just having to wait for that opportunity, and then when it comes, you grab it and you don't let go, and you just milk it for everything it's worth. And I remember getting to Iowa, and I was a receiver when I got there. Played as a true freshman as a receiver. I had recorded 0 catches for 0 yards and 0 touchdowns, even though my brother threw it to me like 6 times, 4 for 6. But I remember that off season having a rough spring, and really being buried on the depth chart going into camp. I think I was 5th as a receiver at Iowa. That means that you're 3 guys away from playing because they're only playing 2 of them. So I was kind of floundering a little bit. Went through camp there and wasn't really getting much of an opportunity. And then a week before the season, Coach Ferentz comes to me and says, "Hey, what would you think about moving to tight end?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know. I'm a receiver." And he's like, "Well, we have 2 receivers that usually play, 3 sometimes, and you're 5th right now." He goes, "If you move to tight end, you're going to play probably half the snaps." And I said, "Okay, let's go to tight end." And I just remember that first day, lined up across from a guy named Matt Ross, who all Hawkeye fans know. Guy ended up playing in the NFL. And the story that I knew about Matt Roth was that right before I'd gotten there, he had ripped Robert Gallery's face mask off of his helmet. And I didn't even know that was possible. But everybody everybody vouched for it. Robert Delley was the second overall pick in the draft the next season. And he's 6'8", a 330-pound guy. Nor many guys willing to fight him, much less try to rip his face mask off. So I lined up across from Roth, and he just crushed me all day. And I think the coaches were going to see if I was going to just throw in the towel. I don't really know how to do that. I mean, my brother, like I said, my brother beat me all the time growing up. He wouldn't let me quit. So I just came back the next day, took another whipping, came back the next day, and slowly but surely got to where, I got whipped less and less.
Yeah, well, and I think for Hawkeye Nation, I think you left quite the mark. It's now tied in you. I think you were probably one of the guys that started that. Second all-time in school history, Scott, with 117 catches, almost 1,500 yards during your time there. So what a career. And really, I think laid the foundation, right, for those that came after you that continue to have a lot of success. I want to backtrack a little bit because you talked about how you never gave up. You talked about just how the perseverance, and you talked about early on coaches that made a big impact on yourself. There's one coach in particular that I know has had a profound impact on myself, but was always in your case growing up at Southlake, and that's Coach Clayton George, who's continuing to have a great career. But, for our audience, Scott was so dominant in high school that we literally had a play as a no-huddle offense. When we'd get a long gain or a first down, we ran a no-huddle offense, and our coach at the time that was giving us signals would just jump in the air. And that meant tricks to the right. Let's put Scotty on an island, 1-on-1, maybe 2-on-1, maybe 3-on-1. Let him run as fast and as far downfield as he can, and I would throw it up. And he usually came down with it. But Scott, give our audience some perspective or life lessons that Coach George, might have given you that you continue to use today, even as you impact young men as a coach.
Yeah, I think Coach George had a tough job because I was as cocky as they come probably in high school. And, he did a really great job of trying to keep me humble. And in a way that wasn't always showing me up. I think there was one time when he had to get on me pretty good. I think he said, "You're not an All-American" or something like that. Got after me pretty good. But I think about that stuff now, and I'm like, well, if he's not saying that to me, who is? And why is he saying that to me? And I think when I got to the level, and I don't know if this was college or maybe even in the NFL, I got to the level where I understood that, man, these coaches just want what's best for you, and they want you to be the best you can be. And once I could really gain, I think I gained that in college. I figured that out. It just made me want to hear what they have to say, want the critique, because I found that I could be better. And when I listened to those critiques and weighed them against what I thought, most of the time they were right. And when I started to take coaching, I really went from being a good player to somebody that could play in the NFL.
Well, and we'll get into that journey, Scott, and I appreciate you sharing that with our audience. And for all the former Dragons, obviously that 17 is a legacy that you left. A Hall of Honor member, I think probably still to this day recognized as one of the best, if not the best, wide receiver to ever come through the program. So privileged to be able to play with you and not be on the receiving end that Coach George definitely, lost his cool a couple times, getting you in line. But let's talk through that process, Scott, because we're a big believer on this show and with guests that have come on that process pays. Well, you've talked about how you've experienced a tremendous amount of success on the field as a high school athlete, that's a state champion, an Iowa Hawkeye, a champion there. Your journey as a fourth-round pick into the NFL probably didn't go as you would have had it written, right? So you're drafted by the Chargers in the fourth round, behind probably one of the greatest all-time tight ends in Antonio Gates. But Scott, give us some perspective or what your journey was like early on walking into that locker room.
Yeah, I think that I didn't really know what to expect going to the NFL. I had been good enough when I got everywhere to play. Now, it took me a while to contribute, but I hadn't been really overwhelmed with the athleticism around me. And I remember that walking into that locker room, and there's LaDainian Tomlinson, and Sean Merriman, and Antonio Gates, and Darren Sproles, and Phillip Rivers, Vincent Jackson. I mean, we had dudes, and these aren't just like good athletes. These are like freak of nature athletes, the best in the world, right? I mean, Antonio Gates took Kent State to be Elite Eight, and then just easily transitioned to being an all-pro tight end in the NFL. Like, I used to watch his routes, and North Turner would be like, "See, follow Gatesy." Well, look at him like, I cannot do anything that guy is doing. Like, I don't have the athleticism that a lot of these guys have. And that took me a while to figure out that I'm not going to get to where I want to go in the NFL just being athletic, being able to catch the ball. I had to become a technician. And that, I don't know that I really even learned that until I'd been cut one time. You know, in San Diego, the first year I played in one game, mop-up duty. My second year in preseason, I got hurt, tore up my toe, was out for the season. When I got healthy, they cut me. And that was a month on the street. And I remember thinking there, man, that was quick. Like, was that it? That might be it. And didn't get called for a month. Went up, the Raiders called me, went up and did a workout with the Raiders with another guy, and they chose the other guy. That was pretty humbling. And then the Cowboys called, and they had been interested in me pre-draft. They loved the local guys, and ended up making their practice squad. And it was the best thing that could have ever happened to me at that point, because I needed to become a technician if I was going to have a chance to play. And I was behind one of the greatest technicians to ever play the NFL, Jason Witt, a guy who was so detail-oriented that he's obsessed with his first step. He's obsessed with his release. He's obsessed with his right tackle's first step when he's on the right side and they're blocking down on power. And I just saw what it took to be a professional. And not just a good professional, but I mean, he's one of the best ever, right? And athleticism-wise, I could do a lot of things that he could do. Oh, he's probably a little better athlete, but close. And I studied him. And I had a good coach. John Garrett was my tight ends coach, and he was another guy who's really detail-oriented, really disciplined. And when I was on practice squad, you're taking every rep, every opportunity you can. So I spent a lot of extra time around there doing developmental stuff that I hated doing. I hated going through first step drills, and I don't want to go catch the ball. I want to go run around. And that wasn't what I needed to do to play right at that point.
Well, and you've touched on something, and I think, from watching your career and knowing the work ethic and just the way you approach the game, this was something that when your success did come, it didn't strike me or probably anyone that knows you as being far-fetched. But you said something, Scott. You said you thought this could be it. And one of the concepts we've talked through with other guests is you can't spell grit without it. And I've heard you talk through, you figured out a way to really unlock that it factor through your grit, through your determination, through really alignment of being a sponge, associating yourself with those in front of you that have figured out a way to unlock success in the NFL. So your practice squad with the Cowboys, I don't know if you're a magnet for just being behind the greatest guys of all time, but obviously that puts you in a position to ultimately land in a prime time role. But let's fast forward a little bit, Scott. You've been a sponge. You're observing greatness, but things even with the Cowboys don't go to, I guess, the preferred plan that you thought. Give us some of that path and what was next.
Yeah, the NFL is a business. And when you're one of the guys in the bottom 5 or 6 on the roster, you're prone to be cut because they might like it. I think the Cowboys like me a lot. I was there for 2 years. I think that they saw me as a guy who could be a contributor in the future. But at the time, they had another guy that they were interested in too, who was on the practice squad, a guy named Mark Rucker from Missouri. And the Bills tried to claim Mark Rucker off our practice squad. And Cowboys tried to make a move where they could keep us both by they were cutting me and going to try and bring me back the next week. And the Bills claimed to me when I got cut. And the general manager for the Bills was a guy named Buddy Nix, who had been the assistant general manager in San Diego when I got drafted. Now, in San Diego, in practice, I could still run some routes and catch the ball. So 6'7" guy that could run a little bit and catch the ball still added some value. And I got up to Buffalo, and I'll never forget, honestly, this is a good story. I got cut by the Cowboys, and I called my brother, and he was always, he lived right there, and he's like, come on. And so he gets over, I'm like, man, maybe I need to transition. I'm like, not going to be a tight end. Maybe I need to be a long snapper. I was like, just catch my snaps for a while. And I think I snapped in the yard for 2 or 3 hours that day to him. And he just chased the ball all over the place because I'm still not a good long snapper. And he finally came up to me and goes, you know what? You're a pretty good tight end. I think you should just keep playing tight end until they quit calling. And an hour later, my agent called and said the Bills claimed. And I'll never forget the flight to Buffalo because I was pretty disappointed. I mean, I grew up in Dallas. The Cowboys were the team I wanted to play for. I'd been building a little bit of a role, and special teams coach loved me. I was, a big part of the special teams at that time, and just really disappointing. Felt like a big blow. And I remember getting on the flight. It was December. And I was going to Buffalo where I think it was 17 degrees and it was snowing. And I remember praying and just being like, Lord, I don't know what you have for me in this opportunity ahead, but if there's anything here, let me be ready for it. And having my perspective completely change on a 3-hour flight from Dallas to Buffalo, going from being disappointed to excited about an opportunity. And then we go up to the facility and Buddy Nix, the guy from East Tennessee, he's, got an accent. He says, well, Parker, I think you in a great spot here because you're going to be starting here pretty soon. And then sure enough, the next week I started. And I started for the next 4 years.
Well, and I want to dive into that because it's a constant theme throughout this podcast of when opportunity's been presented to you, you've taken advantage. And here you were kind of as a journeyman, through the NFL, trying to find your niche. And I think this is going to land well with our audience, Scott, because these are the same principles, right? That whether you're in business, sports, competitive athlete, trying to land a job, opportunity is always out there. It's, are you going to accept it? And are you going to make the most when your number's called? Well, not only did you make the most, Scott, but for those of us that were smart enough to pick you up on the fantasy team for that first game, let's walk through that, Scott. You're playing the Kansas City Chiefs. And I don't want to spoil the ending of what happened, but you had 5 catches that game. 2 of them went in the end zone. But Scott, what was that feeling like for you to enter in as a Bills starter and exit with a huge game?
This is going into my 5th year in the NFL. At this point, I have my stats. I have 1 kickoff return for 11 yards. That was the first stat I recorded in the NFL. I think I have 6 tackles on special teams, and I have 1 catch for 8 yards. Doing my 5th year, a real great start. But that year was the lockout, that offseason. And man, couldn't have come at a worse time. I'd just gotten to the Bills, and I was going to be a restricted free agent, so didn't know if they were going to tender me or if they were just going to let me go into unrestricted free agency. And all of this doesn't get resolved during that lockout offseason. So, you're working out on your own. And I'm so blessed I live here in Iowa City, and the University of Iowa, the coaching staff has been the same since I was there. And just with open arms to the NFL guys, they've got a locker room for the NFL guys. There were a good group of guys that worked out at Marshall Yonda all offseason, that offseason here at Iowa, and just got ready. And I was in amazing shape when that lockout ended. They tendered me, so I signed my tender, and I was super excited. And I went into camp as the number 1 guy, but there was some competition there, and I probably put that to bed in the first week of camp. Just really was able to form a connection with Ryan Fitzpatrick, which is one of those things that I saw with Antonio Gates and Phillip Rivers, Jason Witten and Tony Romo. You've got to facilitate a relationship. And Fitz was really good at that too. And we hit it off and had a lot of continuity. And I had a really, really good camp and hit the season ready to roll. So yeah, we get to Kansas City September 11th, 2011. And I don't know what to expect, but we run down the opening kickoff and we cause a fumble and recover it. And 3 plays later, I got my second catch and I'm in the end zone. And I go to spike it, the guy knocks it out of my hand. Stevie Johnson knocked it out of my hand. I couldn't even get the celebration right. It's just kind of the way that the career had gone at that point. But that felt like a huge breath of fresh air. Yeah, we ended up blowing out Kansas City that day. Had a good view, caught another touchdown. But I'll never forget my sister in the parking lot afterwards. She had driven up from Fayetteville, Arkansas. And, your family goes through these things with you too, 4 years of grinding and, not seeing much fruit for your labor. It weighs on you and it weighs on your family because they see how hard you work. And, I don't know that any of us ever thought that anything like that was going to happen to me. But I got in the parking lot after, off the bus right after the game, and my sister's there. And she's crying. And this is my older sister who, she was part of beating me up growing up too. I'm never going to cry about anything I did, for sure. And she just said, "What just happened? Was that real life? What just happened?" And I said, I don't know. That was, but God's amazing. And he can do amazing things. He gives us all unique talents and abilities, and just use it for his glory, and he'll do amazing things with it.
Well, that's amazing. I know how much family has played an impact on you, and you've touched on it, and to see them be able to celebrate, but not just celebrate. I think for the next 4 years, Scott, you not only took advantage of the opportunity, but really put yourself in, having probably one of the most productive or multiple seasons of productivity at the tight end, position in the history of the NFL. And part of it's probably due to that connectivity and the relationship piece you commented on with Fitzpatrick. But that's also something, Scott, on that relationship piece that I think is going to resonate with our audience, because relationships are key to success in any aspect of life. You as a football player, you being on the receiving end, as a receiver from a quarterback, that's a pivotal relationship. But can you comment on, as the season progressed, as your time at Buffalo progressed, obviously relationships probably continued to develop, but what were some things in the locker room or some mindsets or just some traits of individuals you played with that made you scratch your head to say, that's what makes those guys successful?
Yeah, I think that you see the way they treat people. And, I think that from a very young age, and Coach Dodd was big on this, that, man, there are so many people supporting what the players do on a high school team, right? Managers, things like that. And then you see that for college, there's an even bigger support staff, and then the NFL even bigger, right? But you see how the guys like Jason Witten treat the trainers and treat the equipment managers, and the way Phillip Rivers treats people, and people in the front office, how he remembers their names, he knows their names, he asks about their kids, things like that. And when you get into this workplace, and not just your teammates but the support staff, you really get to know them. And then you build a relationship, and you really end up starting to care about these people, and they care about you too. That is what really is rewarding in those situations. And I do think it helps your success, because one, you're more comfortable, and you've got more people that are invested, not just like they feel like you're invested in their success, so they want to be invested in your success too. And when you have that cooperation, you really start to see a culture build. And I feel like in Buffalo, when I got there, they were starting to build this culture. And then over the next 4 or 5 years, I was able to be a part of building something a little better. And it's gone through some changes since I left there, and they've improved it even more. And, you see how successful they are now. It's an organizational thing. I talked to the equipment managers that are still there and guys in the front office, just like, man, this is what we were building towards. And like that, they're thankful that we were a part of building towards that. And I think that's pretty awesome to see.
Well, I thought about rocking the red and blue for Bill's Mafia because I know you're still a living legend there in Buffalo. And part of success, Scott, that in the NFL in particular, comes with financial reward. And I think all that work and perseverance and taking advantage of the opportunity ultimately sets you up and your family right for financial success, which ultimately you continue to take advantage of off the field. But as your career started to, not end, but put yourself kind of in that latter journey, give our audience, post-Buffalo, what occurred and really has now propelled you into life after football.
Yeah, so, Buffalo cut me and I ended up signing with the New England Patriots for my last season there. And, really had a great spring, kind of tweaked my knee. I'd had a few surgeries on already at the end of training camp. And it was just kind of went downhill from there. Ended up getting an MRI after the game, I think week 10 or 11. They're just like, your knee ain't gonna make better, buddy. Like, this might be it for you. And feeling exhausted. Like I was just to the point where I couldn't do the things I wanted to do physically anymore. And the amount of time that I was putting into just being physically ready to practice every day was taking its toll on me physically and mentally. And I was just ready to be done with football for a while there. That I don't think when I retired, I was so excited to just relax because I had that year in New England was a grind. And it's the emotional year. We went to the AFC Championship and had a 2-point conversion that would have tied it at the end. And, we ended up losing that game. I just remember knowing after that game that was it and feeling that, but being all right with it. I think a year or two after I got done playing, I really started to miss football again. And I'd started a real estate investment company with my brother a year after I was done. And that was great, getting to work with him. He's been, like I said, he's been the biggest influence in my life, as somebody I looked up to all along, and getting to work with him has been really great. And he's really, really smart, and I've been able to learn a lot from him in these last 5 or 6 years. Starting a real estate company and it really started to take off in that realm, just raising money and investing in commercial real estate type of stuff. And just seeing how when me and my brother were able to work together and build that relationship, how we were able to be successful and have a lot of fun doing it too. I think that since then we've transitioned. We're now working with Group Key City Capital. They've got all the infrastructure we ever wanted as a smaller shop, and now we've got a multifamily real estate fund that is usually around $100 million that we do a fund a year, and then we have a debt fund that offers some really good ways for people to grow their wealth. And it's been really great. And I don't think that I would have thought about joining Key City when I was done, but getting to know the guys who run it, a guy named Ty Lassiter and his brother Boone Lassiter, guys from Stephenville, football players, worked hard, and they ended up setting up shop at South Lake, and got to know them through Nathan, and it's just been a really great synergy with those guys as guys who, are ready to work as hard as the day is long, right? And, for our investors to get the best returns they can, it's been really great to partner with them.
Well, it's no surprise of success on and off the field that you have, Scott. And there's also been a constant theme where you've aligned yourself right with these relationships or like-minded individuals that want to scale, want to grow. You've been on the receiving end. Sounds like now you're more on the giving end of advice and opportunity for individuals to scale their investments. But one thing I'd like to touch on, and you mentioned this a little bit, of coaches that really have inspired or brought out the best in you? And you've been around some great ones. You mentioned Coach Dodge, one of the most respected names and champions in high school football. Coach Ferentz, a legend in the game of college football. Coach Belichick, the individuals that you had referenced throughout your time at Buffalo and Dallas. But what were some of the themes, or give our audience, Scott, a lens into behind the curtain of really what separated those coaches and just some maybe food for thought to our audience, Scott, of attributes you continue to take from what they taught you or the way they operate?
Yeah, I mean, I think each one has taught me something different, and they all have different approaches. Coach Dodge, I'll never forget, like, just feeling like he cared about you and how much fun that made high school football, knowing that they cared about us, we cared about each other, and how much of a family he built us into. And I mean, I think that led us to our senior year where, first team to ever move up from 4A to 5A, undefeated state champions, just because we didn't care. Like, we didn't care that we were picked fourth. We didn't care about it. Like, we were just going to go have fun and win, right? And that was all we wanted to do, have fun and win. We did it. And I just love that he built that culture that still exists at South Lake today, where it's competitive. Everything is competitive. And that's going to make us all better. And when we're all bought into that, man, it just became really fun. And I mean, me and Aaron Morgan making each other better every day, out there on the island, he's trying to guard me. This guy is, a track star, right? He didn't play corner. Well, it was hard to get deep on because he was fast. But, I think we both made each other really better. You look at Andrew Hansen and Chase Harris on the other side making each other better. I think Charlie Stelicup and Coach Dodge made each other better with how competitive they were with one another. And just creating that culture was something that's impacted me to this day. And I mean, Coach Dodge and Coach George, those two guys are the reason that I'm a high school football coach now, because the impact that they had in my life, I want to be able to say that I could have some of the impact like that on some of the guys that I coach now. And getting to call them and tell them, hey, I'm becoming a high school coach because of y'all. That was pretty great.
Well, that's awesome to hear. And maybe we'll delve into that a little bit, Scott, because I know you continue to impact folks, outside of the game of football, but now you're able to kind of transcend some of that working knowledge and brain capital from some of these great coaches onto young men. Give our audience some perspective of what you're sharing with them, maybe some highlights of your career as a coach and how that continues to help, keep you, part of the game.
Yeah, I think I had some misconceptions about how much I would like coaching and why I would like coaching. I thought I would like coaching because I love football X's and O's, and that maybe I'd be able to out-scheme some of these guys, and that would be fun. And that's been partly true, and that's been fun. It's not even close to the most rewarding, the best part of it. It's the kids and the relationships you build with the kids, and seeing them at school when they want to come up and dap you up and just say, "What's up, coach?" or having them write you a letter at the end of the season just saying thank you for pouring into me and making me better every day. Those are things that I didn't expect, and they were overwhelming with how rewarding it was and fulfilling it was to be core into these kids' lives and really be somebody that they look up to. And it's also challenging because, you see the amount of integrity that guys like Coach Dodge and Coach Ferentz, those guys are just full of integrity, and they're the same guy every single day. It challenges you to be that when these kids are looking up to you and you rely on that. And that man, it's been as sanctifying as parenting. I'd say, parenting will make you whatever you thought of yourself. You'll find out pretty quickly you ain't that great.
Well, you still look like you're in playing shape, and I don't want to put our dear friend number 3, Aaron Morgan, on any blast at all, but I'd love to see you two back in a one-on-one drill. But do you ever go one-on-one, Scott, with any of the current Iowa boys that you're coaching?
Man, I try to stay away from that. I'm one false move away from another surgery, so I try to limit it to one rep, and then that they want to turn it around and no, I don't do it too often with them. I always tell them if they want to see what I can do, go look it up somewhere.
I would encourage our entire Win the Day community to obviously invest in taking a look at your story. I mean, Scott, you've shared kind of the mindset and the process and really taking advantage of the opportunities that have been in front of you. And I think for those kids, right, that get to be around you, that you're living proof that opportunity's out there. Bet on yourself. All it takes is that one opportunity, and sky is the limit. So kind of as we start to close out, Scott, you've touched on a little bit around Keystone and just your continued success off the field. But what were some of those life lessons from football that you feel like are really carrying over with your role now in the real estate, environment?
Yeah, I think that you've got to find a balance in life, and real estate and my job, it makes it easier to go after that and understand what I'm working for when I have a balance of some form of service, and that's what coaching gets to be for me. Just a ministry of service to these kids in our community, and just wanting to build a culture that that's something special that people want to be a part of, so that you can impact those people. And I think that's been really rewarding. The success in business and stuff, I've been very blessed to align myself with some very, very smart people and get to piggyback off of their success a lot. And I think that a lot of that stuff is just how hard you're willing to work and decision making. And you got to find a good group of people, because you don't ever want to be just making decisions like this on your own. So you get a good group of people that you could trust in, and you all make decisions together. And those have been the businesses and the investments that have been the most successful. And in my short career here, I think I've been doing real estate for 6 or 7 years, so I'm still learning a lot. And I think that's been something that I've learned too with coaching, is the more open you are to learning, the better and better you can become, because man, the second you stop, you're just going to get passed by.
Well, you've been a constant learner, Scott. I think your testimony and your journey as an athlete shows that. You mentioned the word impact. I've seen it firsthand. Everything you've touched, everything you've been involved with, you've made tremendous impact. I know that the student athletes that continue to be a part of what you're driving there at Iowa are definitely blessed each and every day. The ambassador you are for not only a former Dragon, a former Iowa Hawkeye, a tremendous NFL career. I think that word sums it up best for you, impact. And that's something that Scott Chandler and the legacy will continue to live on. So kind of as we close, Scott, is there anything else for our audience that you'd like to share before we end the episode?
Man, I just wish we'd come around after Johnny Football. They've been coming up with nicknames for you like that. If y'all really want to go see something special, find this man's highlights. He had a double spin move for a touchdown in the state semis. We had some legendary plays in that game, but that was one of the most electric.
Well, I appreciate it. I think it's the surrounding cast, right? It's the people that are always around you that make you better. You've touched on that. And, I've always been blessed myself to be around greatness and folks like you that continue to inspire. I think for our audience, Scott, the things you've shared, the passion you played with, and really just the process to take advantage of the opportunity is something that's really going to land with our audience. One thing I think that you will appreciate as we close every single episode, Scott, and really has been our mantra with Win the Day with Wasson: we rise, we grind, we shine, we impact. If it ends in a Y, we choose to win the day. Appreciate you joining, Scott Chandler, a 2002 champion at Southlake, a champion in life. I got to end with one thing, Scott, and you know what I'm about to do. 2002, we were unstoppable. Thank you so much for joining.